been so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. But I ain't never crossed a man that didn't deserve it. Me be treated like a punk, you know that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and where you're walking, or you and your homies might be lying to chalk. I really hate the trip, but I gotta low. As they croak, I see myself in the pistol smoke. Fool, I'm the kind of G the little homies wanna be like, on my knees in the night, saying prayers in the street light.
Been spending most of their lives living in the gangster's paradise. We've been spending most of their lives living in the gangster's paradise. We keep spending most of our lives living in the gangster's paradise. We keep spending most of our lives living in the gangster's paradise.
Look at the situation they got me facing. I can't live a normal life. I was raised by the state, so I gotta be down with the hood team. Too much television watching got me chasing dreams. I'm an educated fool with money on my mind. Got my tin in my hand and...
Okay, and that's enough for the musical introduction. That's my most popular reel, probably above 10,000 views so far, showing the corruption endemic to New York family court system. And somebody is is playing it, probably enjoying it very much. But hi everyone. Let's see. We don't get the feedback. But hello everyone. We are here for another episode of the TRoman Show with T. Matthew Phillips, an attorney all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada, and two great guests. One of whom is very new to us, but hopefully will be coming back. Miss Anne Elliott, with a lot of experience in the New York court system for foster care system. And maybe without further ado, because I know people are anxious to hear what you have to say and share, please take it from here, Miss Elliott.
Oh, wow. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Roman, for inviting me to this platform to be able to share my experience in the New York City child welfare. We just met, so I'm still kind of waiting also to hear your story. Because we were here to do Mark's story, and we did a brief interview, and so I felt it was important that I share my experience in the New York City child welfare system. I started New York City child welfare system in 1996. My class was the first of the new agency called the Administration for Children's Services to the newly appointed commissioner on the Giuliani, Nicholas Capetta. My class was the first graduating class of the new initiatives that they were bringing forth in terms of trying to professionalize the organization. Since then, I've worked in a variety of departments and roles and positions, but specifically 10 years in the Administration for Children's Services, 17 years I worked in foster care. And so I recently resigned my position as a family service coordinator in the foster care division back in March of 2024, so I can be able to move forward to be able to do what I'm doing now, which is to advocate for parents, but most importantly, to advocate for reform of the whole system. You have had your experience, Roman, you have had your experience, Mark. And so I'm someone from the inside, ready to speak about the sewage. That is a child welfare system in New York, the sewage. That is the family court system in New York, not just only in New York, but also across this nation. And to join the many voices and people on the front lines, advocates, attorneys, parents, grassroots organization, different coalition, to be able to join our forces together to be able to highlight, spotlight what is going on in this very corrupt system of child welfare. And so one of the people that I mostly admire, and the one that I'm, if you go on my website, reformcwn.org, just want to always honor Nancy Schaefer, Senator Nancy Schaefer, who was murdered for her work in this field and exposing child welfare corruption. She was a warrior and she was a champion for what we're doing here today. And because of her that spearheaded and started this movement to tackle the issue of the corruption of the family court system and the child welfare system. So that's a little bit about my background. Almost 30 years in this system, and in this, I mean, I loved what I do. I loved working at ACS at the time that I worked there, and I loved working in foster care. But while I was working in these sectors of foster care, ACE, and dealing also with ACS, it was about 2014 that I began to be troubled about a lot that I was seeing, a lot, because my previous work there was like intake and aftercare. So I worked when kids came in, and I worked when they were leaving the system. And so in 2014, I really now was working within the foster care, which means children are now in the system, and we're planning for the children and the families and for the children to go back home to their parents. But it was during this time that I was beginning to become very uncomfortable with a lot of what I was seeing and a lot of what I was experiencing. And I think one of the first red flag for me was 2014. I had a colleague who wanted to have her child go into charter school in New York City. And she shared this with me, and she said, she really wanted to get her kids in charter school, and she wasn't able to, and how difficult it was. And so it's about a month or two later, she came to me very nervous, very anxious, very upset. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I need for you to read something for me because I am being called into a meeting regarding a case that I had. And I want you to read it, for grammar purposes, spelling, just another I." I said, "No problem." I read it. She went into that meeting, which was about an hour or two, and she came back. And I said, "How was your meeting?" And she said, "I have to continue to work with the parent to get the children back home." And I said, "Well, that's a good thing." And she said, "Well, no, it's not a good thing. Because now when I told the charter school principal and assistant that I was going to do that, they kicked my child out of school, off the waiting list to start in September." And I said, "Why would they do that?" And she said, "Because I have to work with the mother of the child that they wanted. And when I told them I have to work with the mother to get the child back home, they kicked my kid out." And so I had this question mark on my face. And she said, oh, I didn't know that. And she was fumbling quite a bit. So as the discussion went on and I began to ask her some questions, I realized she was given that case. I realized that she was throwing that case. I knew her from another agency. She's a superb worker. But from my conversation with her, I realized that this child on her case was going to be trafficked by her, an illegal black market adoption, to give this child away. When the mother realized that she was losing her child, she got her sister and other family members involved. And so the sister said, "No, something is wrong." And so the sister began to make phone calls all the way up to the commissioner's office. And so now that case was being spotlighted. And so everything was put on hold. And so she had to work with this mother to get this child home back to the mother. And so her child, when September came, was no longer going to be allowed to go to that charter school. So what she was actually doing is, I throw the case and you give me a space for my child. And so for me, this was disturbing. What was also disturbing about that also was a test for me. It was a litmus test to see if I was one of them. If I was going to go along, it was about hearing my conversation about this transaction that was about to take place. And so my resistance, my questions, my concern about what was about to do immediately to my conversation, there was a push to push me out of the organization. And so I began to deal with a whole lot of sabotage, documents being removed from the system to write me up. Up until this point, I was only there 3 months, 3 months. Had no problem with my work. But all of a sudden, this litmus test that I did not go along with, all of a sudden, there was a push to have me removed from the organization. And so at my 3 month mark, I was put on, I was written up extensively. I call it a dossier, and by my supervisor. And I was very shocked. I was surprised. And it says conditional termination. I went to her and I questioned this because up until that point, I've had commendation from family court about my work. I had gotten come from a judge. I've gotten commendation from one of the attorneys about my work with the youth. Up until that point, my supervisor had been telling me I was doing amazing work. Up until that point, I was recommended for certain initiatives that I had to go through several levels of interview, which I only did one because of my history in working with child welfare and because of that interview that went so well. So 3 months later, now there's a move to have me terminated. There were emails that were being removed. There were documents that were being removed. There were things that was being removed in my private space. My drawer was now being searched. And so when my supervisor wrote that dossier, I said to her, you didn't write this. So I need to have a meeting with the director of the program. And she said, what do you mean? I am your supervisor. I said, for the last 3 months, you told me that I have been doing excellent work. But I noticed that the girl that wanted to throw that case was always sitting in the director's office. And people always come to me and said, be careful of her. She's an informant. She works for the director. She comes out, she speaks to everyone, and then she goes back and bring information to her. And so I said, okay, I want to meet with the director. And so I battled back and forth with the director 3 separate occasions. And so, this went on for quite a couple of months until finally they laid me off in less than a year, in spite of the work I was doing. I went on to another agency. And while I was at that agency, that same director now was pushing for me to be terminated within 3 weeks of being in that organization. And so, having speak to my supervisor, I found out that director worked in that agency for many, many years as a supervisor. So, having speak to my supervisor, who the director was, she said she's familiar with her. They worked together for many years at that organization for about 8 years. And so again, there was this push to force me out of the organization. Documents were being removed from the system, which is illegal. These are legal documents that are entered into evidence on trial in court proceedings for families. Case-sensitive, time-sensitive emails concerning families were also being removed from the system. So much was being done to write me up, to build a case to be able to get rid of me. So being someone who knows the system, knows how to do my work in my sleep practically, it was very difficult. And so my supervisor called me in her office one day. And she said to me, someone calls here and wants a child. I said, what do you mean? She said, someone wants a child on your case, a 4-year-old. I said, really? I think this child is with the aunt, with a family member, and everything is going well in the home. And she says, well, someone wants this child. I have worked at this organization for 8 years. When we want to terminate a child, terminate a mother's parental rights, nothing stops us. So I suggest you get with the program. I was shocked, needless to say. Um, and she said, I will not call the shot. I'm going to inform uh, the agency attorney that I have had this conversation with you. And so, whatever happened on this case, a determination will be made. So, I suggest you get with the program. Went to my desk, absolutely horrified. A colleague came over to me. I told her about the very disturbing conversation that I had with my supervisor. And she said, wow, Anne. Another colleague overheard our conversation, came over to me. She said, Anne, the same thing happened to me. I had a parent who did everything that she was supposed to do to get her children back, completed all her services. And at the point of the child returning to do my final court case for trial discharge, my supervisor sabotaged the report and pushed that case into termination of parental rights. And so those children were taken from the woman that I had worked with, and her children were kept into the foster home, adopted, and the mother lost all her rights. And so I said, really? I mean, didn't you speak up about it? She said, yes, I did. I went to my supervisor about it. And the outcome of that was that they were telling me that I was too close to the mother. I was over exaggerating. I was having transference, and they were trying to build this mental health case on me. And so I backed away from it. And I said, okay, wow. And so this went on. I dug my heels in on this case, refused to budge. I did my court report. Mother was doing her services, went to court on the next court date. The agency attorney came over to me and she said, Miss Elliott, I read your court report. Your court report is not reflecting the direction that we are taking this case. We are terminating the mother's rights. And so we are not going to enter your report into evidence. And moving forward, every court report that you write, give it to your supervisor for review, and she will give it to me. And so that's what I had to do. My court report was not entered into evidence. When I went into the courtroom was when I realized that every person in that courtroom was on board with the termination of the parental right of this parent to take this 4-year-old and give it to the individual who called that agency and wanted a 4-year-old child like they were on Amazon shopping. And so I was incensed. The mother's attorney was on board. The children's attorney was on board. The judge was on board. And I was horrified. You could hear a pin drop in the courtroom because they were watching my whole reaction to this whole thing as to why my report was not being entered into evidence. And so they did some preliminary things and they adjourned the case for another time. From then on, I submitted my court report. My supervisor now rigged the reports, reworked the reports against the mother to submit it because the plan of the organization was to terminate the mother's rights and take this 4-year-old child and give it to whoever wanted this child. There was no problem with her staying with her aunt. The home was fine. Everything was going well in that home, and there was no need for us to remove that child. And so I literally dug my heels in on that case. I refused to budge. I continued to advocate for this mother. I continued to be vocal even when I went to court, speaking to the supervising attorney and whatever attorney I could find about this case. Just small talk, shooting the breeze, so my voice would be out there and be heard. And so they backed off on that case because I threatened that if they continued to push me, I was going to go to the New York Times to expose what they were doing. And so they backed off. A few months later, they gave me another litmus test. They gave me another case. And this was a case of a mother, young mother, her fiance, and a little baby. He was like 7 months old. Again, they wanted this case. And so this was another litmus test for me. This was a same-sex couple, extremely wealthy attorneys, lived at somewhere like 35th and 5th Avenue, glorious penthouse. They had adopted two little boys from overseas. I think it was Vietnam. And so they wanted to take it closer to home and adopt here. So I was given this case, and again, my supervisor called me in the office and said to me, I just want you to know that the child's attorney already told the parents that she's going to make sure that they get this child. My question to the supervisor is, this case is what, 6 months old? My question is, why is it being removed from Bronx County? The mother lives in the Bronx. The father lives in the Bronx. The child was born in the Bronx. The case originated in the Bronx. What happened was there was a brand new caseworker who was assigned that case, but they didn't know how to play ball. And so they transferred that case from Bronx County Court, from the Bronx County Foster Care, and sent it over into Manhattan. Gave me the case as another litmus test to see if I was going to fall with the corruption, go along with the trafficking of this child. And again, I refused. And so with this child, again, they bear down hard, again, trying to terminate me, removing documents, removing emails, doing as much as they can to try to write me up. But during that time, the parent, the father, the foster parent, brought the child to the agency for a visit with the mother. And when he got to the agency, the first thing he said to me was, we really want to adopt this child. And the word on the street is, if you want a child, the easiest way to get one is just go into foster care. And boom, just like that, you'll get a child. Just ask, tell them you want the child, and they'll give it to you. And so I had this question mark look on my face, at which time this young man got extremely nervous, started shaking, turned beet red, because he realized I was not with the program. I didn't say anything. I waited for the mom to come. He left. The mother had her visit, went in to see my supervisor, told her that the visit started, and she said, the parental rights of this mother is going to be terminated. I said, this case is very new. Mom is still in her service. How can we go about making that determination? She's still in her service. And so she said, well, the attorney is going to give them the baby. Her name is Christine Calabrese. I'm at the place where I'm calling names right now. And so, of course, the message got back to the court about my pushback, my resistance. Be careful of her. She's not playing ball. She's not going along with what we're doing. And so they start to term me Nancy Schaefer. Now they start calling me Nancy Schaefer. Nancy.
That's really what you heard them saying about you?
Huh?
That was that it's not a
Yeah,
metaphor, right?
that was a code name. Who didn't know my name? They said, "There go Nancy,"
Mhm.
as it
So they,
pertains.
they they know very well who the person is,
Absolutely, they know who she is.
yeah.
And so I prepared for the upcoming court hearing. I spoke to the father and the mother. I asked them, "Don't you have anyone that could take the child, kinship?" And then the father said, "Yes, my mom is willing to take my son." I said, "Okay, I'll love to speak to her." She calls me. I live in Atlanta. I have a home. I'm a retiree. I have a big backyard. I have a nice garden. I go to church. I have a nice community. My church is excited about me getting my grandson. My pastors volunteered to buy my plane ticket for the next court date, and I'm celebrating. I went into my supervisor and I told her, "Listen, we have a resource for this baby." She says, "Make sure you don't put it in the report." I completed my report and I put it in the report. Getting ready to leave to go to court, she stops me. "You didn't show me your report. I need to review your report." So I email it to her. I said, "Okay, I'm off to court. When I get there, send it over." Went off to court. She sent the report and removed the resource from the court report. And so when the father um, and everybody came to court, I said to the father, "I need you to do something for me after the court hearing proceedings." He said, "What is that?" I said, "I need for you to raise your hand after all the proceedings is over. The judge is going to ask you, what is it you need? Tell the judge that your mother in Atlanta is willing to be a kinship resource for your son. And if Miss Elliott could call, you are willing to give me the number so I could call and speak to your mother." He said, "I'll do that." And so that's what happened after court. He raised his hand, the court asked him. And so the court now was forced to explore the kinship for this child. Subsequently, uh, the heat, as I began to explore, speaking to the grandmother, they bear down even more on me and begin to do all kind of stuff. And I realized, okay, I'm going to be fired like next week. And so I started looking for a new position, and immediately one opened up for me, and I went on to another agency to work. And so again, while I was at that agency, they came after me because now the push was, we've got to get her out of child welfare. This was 2016. We've got to get her out of child welfare. She's not playing ball. She's not with the game. And so again, here I was. I was the coordinator for the kinship unit. I was preparing packages for kinship, having children go to kin, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, and within 10 weeks, because I was able to do things a little differently, I took that department in New York City to number one in 10 weeks, filing King Gap packages to be filed in court. And so ACS called, they wanted to know what I did. How was I able to accomplish this so quickly, to get these kinship cases off and filing and bring this agency to number one in filing of King Gap and kingship cases. Immediately after that, in 2 weeks, I was in a meeting about me being terminated. Again, I was not playing the game. I was not getting with the program. I was not playing ball. And so again, um, within 8 weeks after that, I was terminated. Friends and colleagues of mine, during this time, I began to deal with um, a lot of things like attempts to poison me on the job, infiltration in my home, my management infiltrating, illegally coming in my home. I was being watched, I was being monitored. All my electronics was now hacked. my system in my home, in the workplace. Lots of documents was being removed for parents that were doing, support, because I was a very strength-based case planner, which means I'm not going to watch a visit and see something that the parents may not or should not have done, and then write it in a court report and submit it without having a post conference to be able to guide the parent, help the parent, coach the parent, because my goal has always been reunification of families. Reunification, that is the goal. The goal is not an adoption. Adoption is an option, not a priority. And one of the things, the sad reality is that ASFA is not about expediting permanency, but expediting termination of parental rights. The Adoption and Safety and Family Act is about giving parents 12 to 15 months to get it together. And if you don't, we're going to change the goal to adoption and take your children. Now, as we know, and you all probably know, that the family court is very, and the judicial system and child welfare system is very incentivized. My understanding of adoption attorneys is that one person told me it's up to 5,000, another said it's up to 3,000. I haven't gotten the right figure in terms of adoption. When foster mothers become adoptive parents, when they take the adoption finalization paper to the IRS, they get an incentive. In New York City, it's $15,000 for each child. They have significantly raised the rates in foster care. And so children now have become a commodity on the stock exchange market of trafficking children and giving children away. And I just want to go over the rates for a minute. The maximum state rate in New York payments for adoption subsidy since March, the new figures as of March 31st, 2024, in New York, the regular rate is $1,284. So if you adopt 2 children, do the math. Special rates are $2,012. Exceptional rate, $3,015. And extraordinary rates are $3,711. And so because of the incentivization of the judicial system, child welfare system, I spoke to an attorney who retired after 40 years, and he said, "Anne, I could not wait for retirement. I love family law. I love doing family, for the families. But when ASFA came into play, that's when the judicial family court system became a sewage. The corruption has been unbelievable." And he said he just could not wait to retire and get out of it. Another attorney said to me on one case that I was advocating for a family out in California, he recused himself from the case because he was trying to do right by the parent, and he started getting threats and warnings. And one of those things, they call a child welfare report on him and tried to remove his child. And he said, "And I gotta back off." I told my client I can no longer represent her. And he said, "Are you going to continue to advocate?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Just know that the California court is a sewage. It is a crime family syndicate. Do you know who Nancy Schaefer is?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Just be careful." Basically, he was saying she was murdered for exposing the corruption in family court and in the child welfare system. And so I went on to another organization, having a bounty on my head, but stayed in because I needed as much information that I could get in terms of what needs to be out here in the public concerning what is going on in the child welfare system. Went on to another agency. Again, I was followed, I was tracked. Again, notes and progress notes, information and documents was being removed. I was there for 7 months. This same director tracked me everywhere again, terminate her, push her out. Um, Went on to another agency again, and at that agency, um, again, I was being threatened. And so I realized that my life was greatly in danger, and I had to more or less be very careful um, of things that were being done to me on the job. One of the situation where I had a water bottle. I usually walk around with my water bottle, um, but went to the bathroom, came back, and someone unscrewed it, put a different cap on it as a warning to me, just to back off. Um, IT gave access to the system, and so they were going in there, changing information, removing documents again, because the goal and the thrust is always to traffic these children. One of the supervisors who came on board that was very new, she came from Board of Ed, was only there for a few months, maybe 3 months. Passing her office and saw her looked a little troubled. I went in, I said, "Is everything okay?" She said, "That was strange. That's strange. I'm dealing with something very strange." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "I'm looking for the notes on my parent because ACS is going to court. She's doing well, and I don't see any of my notes." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, the mother is doing well. I mean, I'm so proud of her." And so I document all of this. And I know I put the notes in, but it's not there. I said, "Perhaps your notes was removed," because I've dealt with that. Because ACS, when ACS make up their mind that a child is not going back home, this is what happens. She says, "As a matter of fact, and I think you're correct, because when I speak to the CPS worker to tell her how great the parents is doing, she just isn't very receptive. She's trying to give me another picture, trying to, for me to change my assessment, and I refused. I said, "You are new to the system, so you will learn. Basically, your notes was removed. You're going to have to do it over, put it in, but I would advise you to do what I have done. Print everything that you do for the parent. And perchance the notes are not there, you still have it to enter into evidence because you took it out of the system. And so they cannot argue, your supervisor or manager cannot argue." Another colleague of mine completely left the system because the supervisor went in and told her to rearrange some things in the notes, and she refused. And so when she went in and went through her notes, there were things in the notes that she did not write. And so she said she would not touch the notes. And her supervisor said, "You're being insubordinate." And she said, "No, I'm not being insubordinate. That's not my language, and I did not write that, and I will not go in and alter anything." So she said, "Today I hand in my resignation." So this is what is happening in the foster care system. Um, Children are heavily being trafficked. The youth, the young girls, the young boys, heavily being trafficked. Joe Biden is the number one child trafficker in this nation. As far as all the unaccompanied minors, they are being trafficked. This was brought out in the Congress in the subcommittee questioning. There was a lady, I think her name was Tara Rodas, who went in and testified. She was from the Health and Human Services, and she disclosed and she brought documents of how these children were being trafficked. Now, this is something I suspected all along that was going on, but her testimony and her documentation proved exactly what I suspected. And behind her testimony actually came out to be a reality. And so back in December of 2021, I believe, 2022, I was on a podcast. I called out the agency where I was being forced to traffic children, um, and I refused. And so I called out the agency, which was Sheltering Arms, that this was going on and that they need to be investigated. Within a month, came out in the papers that they were closing the organization. After 200 years, they decided to shut down. Because all you have to do is open up these records. All you have to do is to get these birth parents to come forward, request their record from Albany, open those records and begin to review them. I was willing to do that myself as an advocate. And so last June, I went on another podcast. I called out Judge Clark Richardson, who is a child trafficking judge to the elite. And I said I was going down to Manhattan Family Court to protest. I wanted parents with my placard with his name. I'm calling all parents to come forward, that we're not going to stop until this judge is removed from the bench. And all I needed to do, and what I'm saying here is what I said on the podcast, is ask them to request their record from Albany so I can review it. I know what needs to be done. I know what should be done. I know where agencies are dropping the ball. I know what information they're not giving the parents that they should give to the parents. And so I could go through those cases myself with a fine-tooth comb and show where and why these children and why the rights of these families were being terminated. And so that very week, he was missing. No one knew where he was. And I think a week or two, the papers put out that he was found, that he was safe. Internally, last year, I was saying to someone, hey, whatever happened to Richardson? You know, is he back on the bench? And they said, no, girl, he was in a psychiatric facility that whole week. And he's still out. And so from June until November, he was still off the bench. And so they were getting ready to spearhead an investigation against him. And he immediately turned in his retirement documents and since retired from the bench as of last December. So what we need to do in terms of exposing the corruption in the family court system and the child welfare system, we need to get noisy. We need to begin to protest. We have discussed it. We have educated. We have given out information on what goes on. I am from the inside, and I can assure everyone it is going on. Children are being trafficked. The agency that I just left, one of the reasons why I left the foster care system was if we are taking in 30 children a month in intake, and I've observed for 2 years that there's only 2 families coming for visit at the agency, and the 2 same caseworker. I know what foster care looks like after 3 o'clock. It's a crazy house. Families, children, mothers, father. It's crowded. When I'm leaving work, it's like, excuse me, excuse me. Kids are screaming, kids are crying. But there was absolutely no parental visits going on in this organization that I observed for 2 years. When I asked for a master list of the birth parents so I could be in touch with them, it was denied me. One of the supervisors said, oh, we don't have that much birth parents. How can you not have that much birth parents when we're having so many children coming into care? That's my question. It has not yet been answered. And so there are a lot of managers that are on board, a lot of staff that is on board with this. When I ask every agency that I'm with, I seek out the youth development specialists, preparing youth for adulthood. I said, listen, I see a lot of programs for the youth, a lot of workshops for the youth. Why isn't there one on trafficking? It's an epidemic in child welfare. I've had kids on my case that was being trafficked. I'm hearing of youth in residential, the young men that are leaving and they're coming back, but they cannot sit because they are out there with traffickers. Girls are coming in, they're being trafficked. and we are not diligent in following up who these traffickers are. Where are they? We're not following up, doing due diligence to be able to work with law enforcement to bring these traffickers to justice. And so when I'm having this conversation, everybody goes silent. When I ask, why are we not having workshops to teach our youth about grooming and luring and to spot the trafficking and the red flags, everybody goes on mute. So the agency is very complicit with the trafficking of children. And most of it is managed by the middle management, the supervisors, assistant directors, and directors. Every worker will get a litmus test to see if they're with the program. Most of the people that I'm seeing now there are complicit with the crime of trafficking children. Why? There are financial incentives, there are perks. You will stay in your position forever because you're with the program. I'm talking about what I know. I'm talking about what I've experienced. I'm talking about what I've seen in the child welfare system in the last 10 years. And things need to change. We must take action at this point, which means we must protest. And if you go on my website, there's certain things that I'm demanding. We have labor laws because there was a protest. Unions were formed, and labor laws was put on the board because of marches and protests. Women got the right to vote because of women's suffrage marching for the right to vote, and they got the right to vote. There were marches and protests to end the Vietnam War. The marches and protests ended the Vietnam War. There was civil rights march, civil rights movement to give us some rights. They march and they protest, and they got civil rights on the book. Black Lives Matters march and protest and got what they want. Child welfare advocates, social justice, agents of change and reform for the family court and the child welfare system. We must organize across this nation, state by state, county by county, and begin to march and begin to protest. But most importantly, when you call out these judges, when you take a placard and go in front of family court, when you call out their injustices, when you get the parents to rally and come together, I guarantee you, they will retire, they will recruit themselves, and they will get off the board as quickly as possible. Get off the bench as quickly as possible. It is time for action. It is time for us to move. I'm here with the voice within the system that worked in the system. Most people that I've come across are working outside of the system, which means there are parents that are experienced the corruption. There are attorneys, legal advocates, and other grassroots organization, coalition. But I lived it. I experienced it. I suffered through it willingly to be able to utilize this platform to say child welfare system is a child trafficking organized organization that traffics children. A lot of people are getting paid. A lot of money is being passed around. I think, Roman, I saw some documentation that was sent by a friend of mine, Anthony Sabelli, of where money was being exchanged, Cash App or Venmo, on cases during proceedings. Yes, that is happening. And so I even mentioned.
I exposed that in my case. It's everything is open. Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned a judge who was an advocate friend of mine. She said, Anne, the judge, we were on lunch break getting ready to go back. She was going back into the courtroom and she dropped a piece of paper in my lap. And the paper said, please, 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 I don't want to lose my job, but please open up the trafficking of this child. She knows that child is being trafficked, but there's so much that she can do, right?
That's an insane story, and Yeah, and listen, that's fascinating. You're getting all the stage here on the show, and you're always welcome back. And I think we need to bring you back.
Yes,
We
yes,
just we usually keep it under an hour because
yes,
we're also it's an educational effort, right, for you, for us, trying to get to people. And we know that we all deal in societal level with the short attention spans,
yes,
but we are getting very good viewership. So I just want to acknowledge those who join. I pull the comments up, from people who actually are watching.
yes.
So. Tony was here from Amul's Vision. Also, he has a podcast. I think it's fairly recently started, but getting good viewership. Janet joined, Michelle. People were actually looking and waiting for this live stream. John, a longtime supporter, is here as well. Chris Woods joined. Um, Viridiana, all the way from Texas, watching and commenting. It's important, right? So that's the audience that we need to expose it to. Many people know what's going on, but they help spread the
Absolutely.
message. So what I'm trying to say is that clearly there's more to dive into. I want to open the floor to the attorney that we have on the show here. But I first and foremost, your website is actually running here as as a ticker, right? reformcwn.org, and it's very impressive. You told me that you actually put it together yourself,
Yes,
and
I
you
did.
launched it today, right? So it's a brand new endeavor, and I devoted the segment when you started talking, so people who will watch and watch later, it's there. But it's the website is here, and I scroll through that. So around the beginning of the show, for those who will watch later, around I think minute 10, you can see I pulled it on the screen. So thank you very much for your bravery. It's very, very important to have a testimony from somebody who was on the inside. We, the victim
Yes,
parents, we suspect that that's going on because we see the results, right? And we see the absolute helplessness and lack of ability to change anything once the system has a certain goal in mind. But having somebody like you coming from within the system and confirming that's extremely valuable. I commend you respectfully. I think that's amazing what you are doing. From my part, I think those who participate. Mark Fishman was the one who introduced me to your bravery, your courage. Um, that's very important. You are helping other parents. You know the New York system inside and out. So that's what we need to be doing, right? So publicity, unfortunately, is the only way, and publicity actually protects those publicized, because now you become the government slash the regime's problem, and you are doing that. So thank you. I have nothing but just words of praise. But since we want to keep, and I think you explained your background just
yes,
immensely. So thank you. Those who want to learn more, they can reach out to you. You're a public figure. You're also God-fearing person, from what I've seen, and that's what we are dealing with. It's a spiritual war, right?
oh
So
yeah.
yeah, Matthew,
All
the stage
right,
is yours
thank
now.
you.
Yeah, we are not finishing yet because I wanna hear what the esteemed attorney,
Oh,
who is also a victim of the system, has he was taking copious notes, and I know he has a few gems of wisdom to share with us. So Matthew.
Well, thank you very much, and hello to everybody here. First of all, I wanted to say to Ms. Elliott how impressed I am. You're very articulate, and I'm just so impressed at your bravery and so forth, and I really mean that. And if we sin by silence, I think as the saying goes, it really turns everyone into cowards. And so, God bless you for standing up, and I think that is so admirable. And I two thumbs up on seriously. But I was hoping to ask some questions. And for the audience, Ms. Elliott and I just met earlier today on the program here, and I'm trying to think of what kind of attorney I am. I really don't know, but I do a lot of cross-examinating, and so I was hoping to ask you some questions, not in a cross sort of fashion, but just
mm-hmm.
I'm kind of, if I could ask you, I've heard you use the word child trafficking, and I have a really negative connotation when I hear the term child trafficking. And I envision people being, or children, I guess, being bought and sold for the express purposes of sexual contact. That's my own personal, that's what I'm hearing when I hear this. But if I could politely ask you, what do you mean when, in your own words, how do you define the term child trafficking?
Precisely what you just said, exactly what it is. Any child that is being taken for an exchange, for whether through coercion or for financial gain, and being used for sexual or labor, um, which is what is happening to our children in foster care. So, your thoughts on what your perspective, your views are as to the picture that you get in terms of what child trafficking is, that's exactly what is happening in foster care. Children are being trafficked for sexual favors, children are being trafficked for labor, um, children are being sold on the black market, adoption, but quite a few of them are being trafficked. And as you said, this is spiritual warfare. Um, this is a situation where, a friend and I was joking about it. Not her and I, she was joking about it, which I really didn't think it was much of a joke. That Hillary Clinton, when she crafted Ask for Law, she needs children for her religion, to sacrifice for her religion. Um, and so the premise for the Ask for Law was around that. It removes and takes children. It's the easiest way to get children. Easy, hassle-free way to get children. Before that, they had breeders. Now you have a system where you can illegally get children as quick as you can within 12 to 15 months. And as a case planner, 12-month mark, I had judges telling me, um, start changing the goal, start moving towards permanency, change the goal, have a goal change conference to adoption, 12 months, right? Not counting, and this is why I said ASFA needs to be reviewed, not counting the gaps and the barriers that occurred within those 12-month mark. Systemic failure, service provider agency failure, and CPS failures that happened along the way for these parents and these families. But again, trafficking, absolutely. It is for sexual favors, it is for adrenochrome, it is for sacrifice, it is for human labor, and part of robbing the innocence of these children um, is part of what these globalist, elitist, satanist needs for what they're doing. It is what empowers what they're doing. And so when you think of trafficking, that's exactly what I'm saying. These children are being illegally trafficked. The unaccompanied minor are illegally being trafficked. But again, sexual favors. James O'Keefe shows a lot of that. And for labor, slave labor.
And that's at the border. What what you are describing is right in the middle of New York, like quintessential
Absolutely.
American system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening here. It's happening across the nation. But yeah, absolutely. When I say trafficking, and I'm not just thinking a black market adoption situation where they're going to wonderful homes. That was 30 years ago. Now it's a different ball game. Children are being trafficked for adrenochrome, for sacrifice, for sexual thing, and so are the young girls.
If I go
Yeah.
to time out, I heard you use the word adrenochrome, and I've read a lot of disturbing things on the internet about how celebrities and political elite and so forth will terrorize a child to frighten them and set forth the adrenaline in their blood and then sacrifice the children and drink the blood, which is saturated in adrenaline. And the person who drinks the blood, I guess, gets a euphoric type of high. And it also apparently keeps them younger looking, like the Princess of Bathory or
Mhm.
whatever it was. But is this what you're saying is actually going on? This is
Absolutely. It is the reason. It is the sole reason for trafficking children. They need
and
children.
if I could ask you another question also, while I have you here,
Yes.
I'm just so fascinated. Again, this is so crazy to me.
That's
It's
that's gonna
really
be
shocking. And
that's gonna be a test show for us. Not to cut you off, but Facebook has not been censoring so far. The 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 episodes that we have, but YouTube, I think, will take it down. So we'll test it. We'll test it. A lot
We'll
of
test it. Okay.
trigger words have been exchanged. So excellent.
Oh, I see.
Go
Well,
on.
I
Sorry,
think
man.
also, if no, it's quite all right. I have to be careful here. I have to censor myself, which I'm not good at because I'm a loudmouth, But
Don't worry.
if
Don't
I
worry.
could ask you,
The platforms will do it for you. So we'll see.
what what is what is the cost if, like, let's say I wanted to buy a child for some purpose, say I wanted to do, I don't know, child labor or something. How much does it cost for these wealthy people? What do they pay, and who actually receives the money? Does the agency take the money in but put it under the books under another heading, or do people take it personally and personally collect the money, and then how much does it cost, and how is the money actually change hands?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much they're paying out, but what I suspect is whatever money comes in goes in the pot to be divvied up to the higher ups, from
I see.
the CEO all the way down to supervisors, right? And workers.
Mm.
If you're willing to be part of the child trafficking game, then, you know, for instance, the agency that shut down, when I got there as a temp, which is for 3 months. After 3 months, I was being paid by a temp agency. And so after 3 months, then you become permanent with the organization. By that time, they were trying to remove me from the organization, but they didn't have enough to do that. So when the organization hired me with 18 years of experience at that time, they started me at a salary of $38,000. This was 2015. My colleagues, after I fudged what I was making, my colleagues that was with the program, and their 2 and 3 years, they were making 45 and late 40s. So this is how the money is divvied up, right? It funnels down and everybody's paycheck gets padded. Whoever is involved with the trafficking of these children. Now, how much they're taking in, I'm not sure. Also, the government, the federal government, the more children that are being adopted out, the more money they're getting in to the organization, which means the more money the CEO will get, the more money the VPs will get, right? So it's in the best interest of the whole organization to be part of this criminal enterprise, so their paycheck can be padded.
And Roman, everyone, if I could add, Mark Fishman here. I know Ann 7 years, and I could say that she's one of the most honest people I know, who is a social worker involved with CPS and ACS. Ann was a supervisor in my case in 2017-18, and I can tell you, with Ann's involvement, 8 family court judges in Westchester recused themselves. 8, 6 of which I never met. This going along with my federal litigation for disability discrimination. So I want to say, family judges do fear the truth coming out, and they fear federal litigation where their buddy system in state and city court doesn't work. And I'm fortunate to have Ann, in my case, in front of federal Judge TRoman against New Rochelle. And I've never heard another case in Westchester where 8 judges recused themselves without me meeting 6 of them. What I can say is that Ann has not gotten any Westchester supervision visits since my case, where the judges and the police and the New Rochelle were sued for discrimination. So they do find these exposed stories to be threatening, and they should. We need federal and state monitors. We need New York State Human Rights Commission and New York City Human Rights Commission to monitor what's going on in family court in New York City, as well as in Westchester, as well throughout the counties. A lot of us are doing a group complaint now, and I just want to thank Ann for coming on the show and helping expose the truth here and helping those of us suing in federal court to keep our litigation ongoing because thankfully the federal judges are appointed and certified by Congress and are not subject to voter removal or discourse or applause, that they're there just to hear the law. And in my case, which Ann is participating in, I can tell you that they take her sworn testimony and her facts very, very seriously. And it exposes a lot of what she said here today, and the need for federal oversight, for more state monitors, for New York City oversight, checks and balances to stop the corruption, to stop the mass removal of children. So, Ann, I want to thank you for coming out, and thank you, Roman and Todd Matthew, for hosting this, because the truth is coming out. A lot of federal litigation going on now. So thank you, Ann.
Yeah.
I think my name was circulated up there in Westchester. I think they actually had me blacklisted up there in Westchester from working. Whoever, down here in the city courts, sent my name up there to Westchester. There were individuals that I spoke to that tried to sway me on Mark's case. I refused to budge. I won't say who they were, but they realized that I was a straight shooter. I was a straight up, honest, integral, ethical supervisor on the case, and that I was not going to play for money or anything else. My concern was always the children, how they would be impacted, and the right for parents to be treated fairly and honestly and justly by the judicial system, which is just totally broke down and is totally such a sewage. One of the critical cases that I advocated on was a woman named Karina Feng that's involved with Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, and Hunter Biden, and what they did to her. And I was on the verge of getting that case reopened to review it myself. The case is closed. The children are moving towards adoption, but I wrote a petition to the court, and I stated my 9 points of why this case need to be reopened and need to be reheard. But I begged her, I said, do not file the case. Let me file the case, because she's also an attorney. Because if you go like the other cases before, they're just going to throw it out. Because she made several attempts to file. And so I sent it off. The court responded to me, and they said, we'll reopen the case, but we need you to send it in with a writ. I didn't know how to do a writ, right? So I was working on doing a cover writ for the case. And so she called me and she said, Ann, I'm so sorry. I was so excited. I did the writ, and then I went down to the court to file it, and they rejected it. And so that kind of put a stump on, I said, I asked you not to, because if you did, they would have rejected it. The fact that I got it to the point where they were willing to hear my argument, willing to reopen the case for you based on the stipulations of the gross violation and abuse of the court, that they could not, because what I sent over was solid, it was conclusive based on documentation that I reviewed, and the gross violation of her rights as a parent. In addition to the foster care agency, which was not a foster care agency, which was a drug program, 80 miles away for her to do her visits. That's unconscionable. It's outside of policy. Children are to be placed within their community as close as possible. Transportation should never be a hardship unless it is kinship. This was not a kinship case. She spent 3.5 hours to do an hour visit, 3.5 hours back home. And the place that she went to, her children were the only children in that building. Front, pretending to be a foster care. I said, do you have any friends that are real estate? Could you research that building? And so they researched the building. And the building was a substance abuse program, not a foster care building, substance abuse program. And so I got some other evidence of someone sent me a voice note implicating Nancy Pelosi in it and her son Paul Pelosi. And she sent me a lot of documentation, a lot of pictures. Her daughter was the daughter on Hunter Biden laptop. So this was heavy duty stuff. I thought to give it another shot and see if I could again get this case reopened. Her oldest child is getting ready to turn 18. So I said the best bet. Her child decided to stay in foster care to watch over her children. I said, but she'll be in the position to take custody of her siblings, right? And so that's the route she's getting ready to utilize, being able to find a friend, because she's wealthy, to give her daughter a job, get her own apartment, and so she can file for custody for her siblings. And so that's the route she has decided to go. So knowing this system and know how it operates within, I know how to call the judges to the carpet. And they cannot, like Judge Richardson, he would not have been able to go up against anything that I have to say. And how, having done this 17 years and having my background well credentialed in the work that I've done in the system. I remember writing a report, and the attorney for the report said the supervising attorney wants to see you before you leave. And I said, okay, he has questions on the report. And the supervising attorney said, no, I wanted to meet you because this is the best report we have had come through our division. And I just wanted to meet you and say, job well done. I'm very thorough.
We noticed that, Miss Elliott. I don't want to stop you, but we
Yes.
crossed the 1 hour mark, and just from experience,
Oh,
we've been,
okay.
yeah, T. Matthew Phillips and myself, we've been doing that for several months already, so we get a sense of what where the audience drops off,
Yes.
right? So we want to keep some people just see the timestamp, even though based on the engagement, we get a lot of likes here, a lot of people come in and out. I want to recognize, acknowledge Justice Jay, who joined. Jason is chiming in. You are getting personal compliments, if I may say so. So,
Yes.
people are thanking you for your bravery, the viewers, the watchers. One quick comment, because we are certainly being watched by people from the court system. Mark, when you said threatening, it's I think Rich summarized it. Thank you, Rich, for chiming in as well. Summarize it best. They fear anything that would threaten the status quo. So nobody who watches any episode of what we are doing here is suggesting any type of physical violence, God forbid, any type of threats. This is pure First Amendment exposure, what's going on inside the courts, and you can look at any episode. You will not find anything beyond the First Amendment, which is also done in a respectful but thorough manner. So Chris is saying much respect. Michelle is saying thank you personally, and you are a blessing. I want to conclude the live stream, and obviously, given your 17 years of experience, there's so much you can share, and please do. You are public now. Publicity is very important. We need to be as visible as we can. So now you got exposure to respectful to the audience that I have, T. Matthew Phillips had, and Mark. Thank you again for the introduction. Again, I wanna put one comment here, which was very very I think poignant, saying that essentially what we are doing here is that you are confirming what we see from the outside, and this is very very important. So thank you again for that. Yes, read here. I found it. So we had a lot of comments. I'm scrolling through. Thank you, everyone. It's a validation of what we can all see from the outside. So you're providing the confirmation from the inside, which is invaluable. So thanks, everybody. I think we'll drop off, even though we have a lot of people watching. So please rewatch, please share it, and you're always welcome back. I think we will reconvene soon. Very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, TRoman. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you all.
Bye bye.
Good night.